Good evening, everyone. So thank you for joining this virtual Winter Tree ID workshop. As Maura said, yes, it's transitioned quickly. We were 2 feet of snow, which pictures looked exactly like this. We quickly went into 70 degrees this week, 75 degrees in some places, and now back to 40s and was snowing a couple seconds ago outside. So we're back. This virtual workshop is great for today because it was actually a little more like winter than we saw this earlier this week. But before we get started, just introduce ourselves. So my name is Leah Rode. I am the Youth Programs Manager here at the Van Cortlandt Park Alliance. And my main job is I manage a couple internships during the summer and during the school year. I help out with education programs and help out with volunteer events and wherever else my coworkers is needed. But I'll pass it on to my coworker.
Hello, everybody. Good evening. My name is Leslie Garcia. I'm the Trail Stewardship Coordinator for Van Cortlandt Park Alliance. And mainly my job is managing a seasonal team during a 6-month program and also providing maintenance and care to the trails that we have here at Van Cortlandt Park.
So here, we both work here in Van Cortlandt Park. Not sure how many of you have been to Van Cortlandt Park. If you just want to put in the chat if you've been to our park before, we are the northernmost part of the Bronx over here. And I'll show you a little picture in a couple slides, but throw in the chat if you've been to Van Cortlandt Park before, just to like to see who's been here. Nice, couple of you, awesome. But here for the Alliance, we do a lot of stuff here in Van Cortlandt Park. So our mission is preserve, promote, and support the ecology, recreation, and history of Van Cortlandt Park, and we do this in partnership with New York City Parks. So for a lot of programs, we work with New York City Park on projects. Leslie works with the Parks Department staff frequently on a lot of projects here in the park. And we do a lot to help with the history. We help the natural areas. We put on programs. There's sports fields here in Van Cortlandt Park. There's a lot to offer here. And this is just some of the programs that we do. So we do maintenance and restoration work in collaboration with the New York City Parks. We assist them on these projects, like taking care of the natural areas, making sure the cross-country course is good for the runners, and taking care of hiking trails. If there's any assistance that park staff needs on any projects, we are there to help. We also do community stewardship. So we do volunteer days regularly. If the weather cooperates with us, we typically have Wednesdays, Thursdays, and Friday volunteer days. Even year round, we will have volunteer days in the winter. I was out with our volunteer coordinator a couple weeks ago when it was snow on the ground, and we were still out with a good group of volunteers helping take care of natural areas. And we also have Vital Volunteers, which is a program where you can train to be a next step up volunteer, and you can go out and do a couple projects on your own in the park once you get training. We have research partnerships. Manhattan University comes in and does stuff in our park. The Bronx Council for Environmental Quality. So a lot of people use this park for other things as well. We do history and arts programs. A lot of these are free to the public. So if you live in the area around, take a look on our calendar, and there's a lot of great history and arts projects, like the Enslaved Peoples Project, Barefoot Dancing. We have a few of those coming up in the next few months. Family Fun Days, movies in the park, which a big inflatable screen gets put on a big open field called the Parade Grounds, and you can come and watch a movie. And we do music in the park as well. We do environmental education. So we have our 2 flagship internships, which are summer internships, is the Garden to Market and Urban Ecology Teen Internship. We have Green Scholars, which is a smaller internship during the school year. We have Van Cortlandt Adventures, and we also put on nature hikes and tours. And then we have environmental advocacy too. So if you haven't heard, the Daylighting at Tibbetts Brook is a extremely big green project happening right here in Van Cortlandt Park, which is pretty much reimagining the Tibbetts Brook, and it's going to be pretty cool. So if you want to learn more about that, there's info online. You can look for the daylighting at Tibbetts Brook and the funding for New York City parks. So we try to help out in all just to get funding for all of our great parks here in New York City. So these are just a lot of the programs that we do right here in Van Cortlandt Park, which is pretty big. We are 1,146 acres. So we are currently the third largest park in New York City. The number one park is also up here in the Bronx, being Pelham Bay. But out of that 1,146, about 640 acres of that are natural areas that are protected as a forever wild preserve. So these are areas where we're going out and pulling in invasive species. We are working in those forests to make sure we can help them be as healthy as possible with as many native species as we can. We have a lot of different ecosystems in our park too. We have the upland forest, we have freshwater wetlands, we have meadows, and we have a pretty large pond right in the middle of our park too. So it's a very big park. When I first started working here, I got lost a couple times in all those hiking trails in the northern part of the park. It's good to bring a map. If you've never been here and you want to go hiking, it's good to have a map with you. There's roughly about 20-ish miles of hiking trails spread out all throughout this whole entire park. So you can spend a lot of time walking around. With all these wild areas comes a lot of different trees too. We have a lot of plants, shrubs, trees that you can find here in Van Cortlandt Park. Along with that, there's a huge population of wildlife as well. We have coyotes, we have deer, we have the squirrels, chipmunks, everything you can pretty much find in New York State, we almost have here. No bears have been spotted, so none of that yet. But coyotes are frequently spotted, and so are white-tailed deer. So we do have that such a large natural area that wildlife loves it too. But we are here to help to learn how to ID trees in the wintertime. Leaves are a big part of IDing trees. Wintertime, most trees, the leaves fall. So what else can you do when looking at a tree to help to see what species it is? So there's different aspects we will go through. We'll talk about the branching first. Then there's different other parts of the tree we'll go over to sort of look at. This isn't set in stone. So just because one tree might most of the time have smooth bark doesn't always mean that's going to happen. These are just pretty frequent and just good tips and tricks to keep in mind when you're out in the park, out in your own neighborhood park or wherever else wanting to ID trees when there's snow on the ground. So when we get into branching comes in 3 different varieties. We have alternate, where if you look, the branching isn't going to be across from each other. They'll be alternate up a twig. Then we have whorled. So whorled is going to be 3 or more branches, twigs, leaves that emerge from a single point. Here in the Northeast, whorled mostly consists of evergreen trees. And then we have opposite. Opposite, like the name says, that branches, the twigs are opposite of each other. So this also narrows it down. If you take a look at a tree and you see, is it alternate or is it opposite, that alone could narrow down what species you might be looking at. This is a way to sort of narrow down if you have opposite branching. There's an acronym, MADCAP horse. This could help you remember what trees around your park, around New York, will have the opposite branching. So we have maples, we have ash species, there's dogwoods, there's the caprifoliaceae, which is honeysuckles and viburnums, and then horse, which is the horse chestnut. So if you remember madcap horse, and you can remember what each letter stands for, or horse for horse chestnut, then you can sort of know that, all right, so if I have opposite branching, it's got to be one of these species out that I found. Then we're going to get a little closer to the twigs. The twigs are another good thing you can look at. They won't have leaves on them, but they will still have characteristics that can help you ID a tree out in the middle of the winter. So looking at a twig, we can look at the bottom first. So the terminal bud scar. So the terminal bud scar is a point where the growth, so the terminal bud in the beginning of a growing season will burst, and that's going to create that growth. The terminal bud scar, when the terminal bud bursts, that creates that terminal bud scar. So looking from the between the terminal bud scar and the next terminal bud scar will show you the growth of last season. Bundle scars, they're going to be where the tissue is connected to a leaf or a twig. These can be beneficial in winter identification because, for example, if you notice a twig has 3 distinct scars, that is pretty common for maple trees. So they could also, looking at those scars can help you identify a tree. Sometimes twigs are not going to be, you're not going to be able to see up close because some don't have low growing branches. But if they do, it's just another thing you can look at to help distinguish what species it may be. Lenticels, we will go over in a couple slides when we talk about bark. So we will get back to lenticels. Leaf scars, exactly what it says. It's a scar when leaves fall off, they leave a scar behind. So these are really, can be pretty helpful if you have access and can see the twigs and branches. Taking a closer look could help you narrow down what species that tree might be. So then we get into the last big characteristic that we look at in winter trees, or in trees in general, just when they don't have leaves on, and it's bark. So first one is bark coloration. Bark comes in all shades and colors. So you can have light grays and dark grays. There are different shades of browns, different shades of like greens. Some might seem a little orange. Coloration is a really big characteristic of a lot of different species of trees. Even one tree like this American sycamore bark can have multiple colors on that one bark, on that one tree. And just looking, when you go out into a forest, you can see that there are a lot of different colors. So there are the dark grays and the light grays, trees that might look a little more black. And then there are, like I said, oranges. So it's coloration is a huge variety, and trees come in a lot of different colors. Texture is another very big thing when looking at a tree. So trees can have bark that is smooth, like the upper left. They can have bark that is more furrowed, like you'll see on the one to the right of that one. There are trees that can also be flaky or scaly. So bark that looks like it's peeling off or flaking off, or bark that looks like it has dragon scales or reptile scales. So the texture of bark is another way that you can narrow down what species that is. I am not an expert at tree IDing. I've learned a lot and I've practiced a lot with it. There are some bark that can still look pretty similar. So just because this bark has scaly bark on it doesn't necessarily mean it's exactly that one. There are other trees that most of the time might have like furrowed bark, but might look scaly at some points. Trees' bark also can change when it's a young tree compared to an old tree. So that is another thing to take into account when looking at bark trees. And then, like I said, the lenticels. So the lenticels are they're visible horizontal lines that appear on the bark, and they are these small slits that are in it. So right here, like that right there is a lenticel. All these horizontal lines are going to be bark lenticels. They help in the gas exchange between the internal tissue and the atmosphere. And so the lenticels can be on the bark itself, or like the previous slide, they can also be on the branches and the twigs as well. So now we're going to get into some of the common trees that we might find here in New York. Like I said, there's a lot of different trees here in New York. We are just going to go over some of the most common ones you might find, both here in our park, in other parks in New York City, or even other parts of New York State. These are just some of the common trees you might come across. So we're going to start off with some maples. So maple trees, there's a lot of different maple trees. We're going to go over 3 different maple trees that you might come across. So we're going to start off with the sugar maple. So remember the acronym Madcap Horse? MAD, the M, is maples. So maples are opposite branching because the Madcap Horse is an acronym for trees species with opposite branching. So if you look at the sugar maple, the bud itself is a small, brown, pointy bud. So even in the winter, you can find twigs on them with buds on them. So if you have access and the twigs are low enough where you can see, take a look at those buds. The different species will have various looking buds and colors to them. So the sugar maple is small, brown, and pointy. The bark is variable, but generally sugar maple has more of a flaky bark to it. Then we have red maple. So red maple, good way to remember, look at those buds. The buds are red and they are also longer than they are wider, but they are red. So if you find a tree out there that has opposite branching, you see that has red buds on it, there's a chance that could be a red maple. So the bark for red maple is also generally lighter gray and it's mostly smooth. So red maple is mostly going to have smooth bark. You could sort of see from this picture that it doesn't look too flaky. It doesn't have deep furrows in it. And I'll show you a picture of a tree with the deep furrows in a second. But if then you look up near the top, it does get smooth. So generally, red maples have smooth bark to it. And then the flower buds, red maple is one that will have flower buds in the winter. As you can sort of see the lower picture, there's a lot of buds that will turn into flowers. And then the third maple we're going to go over is the Norway maple. The Norway maple is an invasive species, so it is an invasive tree that we do find all over New York State, and it's very frequently found in our park here too. But the Norway maple has opposite branching. The buds are going to be more of a purplish green bud, and they are going to be wider and darker than the red maple. So the red maple has more of that vibrant, like red when you think of. The Norway maple's bud is a darker and it's also wider than the red maple. And the bark is variable too, but larger trees usually have some furrows in it. So the furrows are going to be those vertical lines in the tree. Some furrows are really deep where it sort of looks like they form like a mountain in the middle. Some are really shallow. And there'll be a couple pictures later on that you can see like a deep furrow. But generally, the Norway maple has furrows in it compared to the red maple, which is mostly smooth, like you see here, and the sugar maple, which is looks a little more flaky. So those are three very common maples you might come across. I want you guys to throw in the chat, which one of these do you think is the red maple? You can say left, center, or right. Which one do you think is the red maple? And remember, bark is a big one. Red maple has this type of bark, generally. Okay, left, center, middle. Yeah, you guys have some pretty good guesses coming on. So the answer is yes, the middle center. So red maple, remember, generally has smoother bark. So when you take a look at these three pictures, the one in the center looks a little more smoother than those other two. The red maple is the center. We have the sugar maple, which is on the left. So that one's a little more flaky looking. And then the Norway maple, the one that has more furrows, that one's on the right. So you can see even on that Norway maple, how those furrows, so the furrows can be like these big like lines in the middle that create sort of this mountain in the middle of them. Those are furrows. So the Norway maple generally has more furrows on it than the other two species.
All right. Thank you for that, Leo. We're going to continue with the same acronym that we talked about, madcap horse. Here's another one called the ash species. This one has opposite branching. And you can see we talked about the terminal scar. This one has different variations to it, but has kind of the similar color coordination for it. And then looking at the bark, you can see it has these diamond-shaped ridges. So certain characteristics in trees you can identify. Some people call them ski slopes. Other thing is just following down the line. You see those diamond shapes in the middle. Those are deep grooves in the tree itself. And if we go to the next one. The flowering dogwood is also one of the acronyms. It has opposite branching. Its leaf buds are on the top are burgundy color. And you can also see in the bark here itself, it has that scaly bark. Same thing how we were talking, it looks like a reptile, like a dragon or kind of scales on it. It's one of the characteristics that you can find on the trees. Next one. All right, and for this tree itself, it's one of my favorites. It's a tulip tree. It's an alternating branching. So now we're talking about a different form of branching. One of the end buds that you can see, they're shaped like a duck bill, is what a lot of people like to identify it. These trees also grow very tall and also has very large furrows within it. If you look at the tree bark texture, you can see again those furrow deep engravements on the tree itself. When they are young, they tend to be a little bit smoother. Oh, a thing to identify on these trees that you can tell if it is a tulip tree is it usually has its little pods. They look like flowers. Once the spring comes around, you'll see them open up into these like beautiful orangey yellow flowers. But during the winter time, they kind of create a skeleton and they stay intact on the tree. Go to the next one. All right, so now we're going to be talking about oaks. So this one right here is a northern red oak. It has alternate branching. The clusters points on the terminal buds. You can see they're all together. They are that color. It's like a brownish red, and even the bark itself has that coloration. If you look into the groves itself, it has like a reddish tone into it. And the streaking, like I mentioned before, the ski slopes, you can follow the line from the top of the tree all the way to the bottom. So that's usually when they talk about ski sloping. And if we continue with the oaks, we're going to go into the black oak. So you can see the clusters of the terminal buds. Usually all oaks are identified like this, just a bunching at the end of little buds. Generally, the oaks have these barks textures that can be kind of blocky. And it's the same thing. It still has those slopes that continue throughout the whole bark itself. And then our last oak that we'll be talking about is the white oak. Same thing, it has the alternating branching. The same clustered characteristics of their terminal buds are continuous through all three oaks. And you can see the coloration again on this. It has a wider tone than the rest of them. So you can tell that it's a grayish, kind of off-white. It has a flaky and scaly texture to it. And this is just a helpful tip to identify the oaks. Some trees have this ability to just retain the leaves. It's called marcescence. It's just the retention of the leaves. It's very common with oaks and a few other species within the park. So instead of having them release out and be part of the decomposition, it stays intact throughout the season. It's usually common on mature trees. But yeah, if you can see it, sometimes the leaf can be a good identifier in finding out what tree you're looking at. And for the next slide will be a small quiz. If anybody can tell me which one of these is the white oak. Someone can put it into the chat.
There.
Yes, a few of you answered. And this one's actually a really good example of the colors. So you can tell that the one that is white is on the right. It has that grayish tones. They're all flaky, but you can see that it has that light toning to it. The middle one is the red oak, and you can tell by the color itself as well. And the one all the way to the left is the black oak. It is darker coloration. And these are just a good reference to see which color and which name of the tree you're looking at. All right. And we're going to continue on with the IDing. So this is a black cherry. It has the alternate branching. It's cone-shaped. Buds are usually brown or green. And a good identifier of the black cherry is just the bark itself. It has these flaky bark textures, and a lot of people compare them to or call them potato chips. They kind of cluster in and overlap on each other. And the lenticels are a big giveaway on the black cherries. If you're looking at it, they have the distinguished horizontal lenticels that you can see as it's maturing as well. Next slide. All right, so this one is a sweet birch. It's, again, alternate branching, and you can actually see from the bark texture itself from this photo, you can see the lenticels are these deep, straight, horizontal lines. Yeah. So also the end of the twigs are colored. It's usually a dark brown as well. And there's a smell. There's certain other identifiers that you can tell with trees is that they have like a certain smell to them. So for this one, it smells like a wintergreen oil. And for the next one, bitternut hickory. This one is a very obvious one, especially now in the springtime. Its buds have this mustard color and it points up. People compare it to clasping hands. It's a very bright color tone, especially in the winter with all the white and washed out tones. And you can also look at the bark itself. It has these in-between cuts that are colored. And it has a visible orange and gray tones. Then the next one, the American beech. So again, it has an alternate branching. These buds are very also easy to identify. They're long and pointy. A lot of people compare them to paintbrushes. And the bark texture on itself is very smooth and gray. And it has that process that we talked about, marcescence, where it holds on to the leaves during the winter. This color is a very smooth and light gray tone that you'll always see on the bark. Next one. All right. So sweet gum, alternate branching. This one has a fruit that it clings onto, and it's usually a big giveaway when you're taking a stroll through the park where the sweet gums are actually existing. You'll see a lot of deposits of the fruit. It's round and spiky, and they tend to drop them everywhere. And the bud itself is always this sphere looking, like long pointed one. And it's usually red and green. It often has these characteristics on the twigs itself that it branches off and looks like wings. It's also a good giveaway when you're walking through a sweet gum forested area. All right. And then we're just going to talk about the, oh, sorry. Okay. So we're going to go to sassafras. So sassafras is also an alternate branching tree. Fun fact about this one, if you smell it, the same characteristics that I was saying when you can identify tree, it has a citrusy smell. A lot of people compare it to Fruit Loops or lemongrass smells. It's very potent. It's very pleasant as well. And when it's in early stages, it's very green and it stays green until it matures enough. Once it does, it starts to create this bark texture, which is a block. It creates these rough ridges around it. And also, sassafras tends to grow very long, thin, and sometimes it winds. And you can see in this photo the texture of the blocks itself. All right. So the black locust, it's an alternate branching. It's very pointy. It has this characteristics in which it has these pointed thorns around it. And it bark itself, it's very easy to identify because it has these deep furrows and it has a rope like texture in between them, as you can see in this photo. The color is always going to be gray to light brown. And again, just to emphasize those deep furrows that you can see on the ridges there. All right, and now we're just gonna quiz you one more time. Can anyone tell me which one is the flowering dogwood? You guys can put it in the chat.
Yeah, 50-50 guess here.
Chances are good.
The first one.
Yes. So the answer is on the left. So you can tell about the bark texture. It has that flake and rounded shape. On the right is actually our red maple. As we discussed before, that coloration between the bark is very red and it has those sharp horizontal grooves throughout the bark. All right, so another one for fun. Can anyone tell me which one is the black locust? I just put it in the chat.
The left one, damn it.
So yeah, so the left one is the black locust. We talked about those heavy furrow groves. They both have it, but the locust has more of a very detailed one. And it's long and horizontal, and you can see the rope-like texture that we talked about in between those groves. And on the right is actually another maple. It's a Norway maple. So you can see that the color tone is a little bit darker and the furrows are a lot smaller. All right. And this is the last one that we're going to test you on. Can someone tell me which one is the American beech? And if you could please put it into the chat. Those that said left, you are correct. So we can tell that we're talking about that smooth bark texture that the American beech has. And on the right, does anybody want to take a guess on what that is?
It's someone's favorite tree.
It's a hint. That is true. My favorite tree is a tulip tree. So you can tell the color, it's that light brown, and it has those furrows and bridges around it, which is different texture than the American beech tree. All right. And if you're eager to start on identifying trees, we have an ongoing project. If anybody has used iNaturalist, it's one of my favorite applications to use. You just download it on your phone and you can take photos of what you're seeing, and it helps you identify from flora to fauna of what you're looking at. It's also a great community base to enforce your IDing, and you can also just catalog everything you find. And we
iMap's a
will,
great app to use. I use
yeah,
it all
and we
the
will,
time, sometimes just for fun, where I'm in a new area or even at work, I'll open up iNav and be like, what are people identifying? What are people seeing in the park around us? Sometimes you can see, wow, this animal or this really rare endangered plant has been seen. So it's really fun to just even play around in iNat. But any IDs you make, it helps the science community, and it helps all of us. And I
yeah.
will throw in the link to, if you want to join this ongoing project for us. If you use iNat a lot, I will drop the link in the chat for you all.
Yes, and I want to
So
say
yeah,
thank
so that
you.
was just some of the trees that we could come across of. And so yeah, if you guys have any questions, we can throw them in the chat. We can facilitate unmuting one at a time if you want to rather speak than type in the chat. But yeah, if anyone has any questions, I think I did see a question up at the top. Yeah, so where in the park are tulip trees located? It's your favorite tree too. So Leslie, do you know some of the parts in the park that tulip trees can be found? I know
Yes.
everywhere pretty much, but is there like an area where it's more condensed of tulips?
Yes. So if you go on the Northwest Forest on the cross country trail, kind of on the highway on the right side, you can see a very heavy area in which tulip trees are um, around. Yeah. So if you look at the map, it's on the Northwest Forest. It's partly more on the left. Yeah. If you just follow the cross country trail that is next to the highway, you will find a lot of those tulip trees. And a good identifier is the color, texture of the bark. Again, it's furrowed, and they like to grow very tall. And if you can see and have good vision, you can look at the attachments of those flower pods. And during the springtime, you will obviously see those flowers kind of bloom.
Oh, so yeah,
Great.
someone asked for the App Store. There's iNaturalist and there's iNaturalist Classic. Um, is it which? It's just iNaturalist, correct, Leslie?
Yeah, the one I use on my phone is actually the classic one.
Okay.
So I stick to that one. Let's see.
I do see someone asked if there are any in-person tree ID field trips. I was going to get to that, so I'm so glad you asked. On April 11th, we will be again with Leo and Leslie at Van Cortlandt doing some in-person tree ID, which will be super fun. We'll be meeting at the Van Cortlandt Park golf course. So there's more information on our
Which
event
is, I'm going to
page
circle
that
it.
we
It's
will
sort
share.
of like right here on the map. Very easy directions to get there, but it's in the southern part of our map, really close to 242nd. So if you take public transportation, a really easy walk to go there.
Awesome. Okay.
Yeah, so I can add that link to you guys. Um, I'll drop that project link in here. I'll show you what it looks like and I'll drop it in the chat when you do get to it. So once you do, if you do end up joining, the internet right here is not loading that well, but
Do either of you have any recommendations for a good tree ID book that has color photos of twig and bark features?
Yes, I recommend the Bark book. It shows you a good introduction on everything we did talk about. It talks about a little bit more in depth on bark itself. It goes through the actual tiers of inside the bark tree and outside. It gets a little bit heavy with the scientific terms, but it has good photos and it's a good reference because it also shows you the leaf shape as well. And I think any Northeast tree guide is also well to use when you're out there.
Well, we did hear Leslie's favorite tree. I would love to hear Leo's.
I don't know if I have a favorite tree. I do like sassafras. I like smells, and sassafras, like Leslie said, has a really sweet smell to it. So if I had to choose, I'd probably go with sassafras because of that smell.
That's fair. Yeah, I love tulip trees and sassafras, and we actually have our volunteer house is right next to a giant tulip tree, and it's elevated. It has two levels, so when you go upstairs and it's all glass, you can see all the tulip tree flowers, and it's a great opportunity to actually be able to see them kind of up close. So if anybody's interested in that, you'll have to come on some of our tours as well. Yeah, sassafras is getting a lot of love. I love those 3 different leaves. It's an awesome tree.
Yep.
All right, any other questions? Give everyone a second here. No? Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much, everybody. That was really great. I hope you have a bunch of new tricks to use when you're out there IDing before we get leaves. Today was a very weird kind of day, but I think that means spring is coming. And just a reminder, this series does continue next Thursday with the Natural Areas Conservancy. They'll be talking about the work that they do for New York City's urban forest, including the forest management framework. And they'll also cover the 2024 forest assessment that was done. So that will be super interesting. On March 26th, we have Mike Feller, who will be speaking about the history of wildfires in New York City. And then again, April 11th, we're in VCP trying out all these skills. So I hope you all will be able to join us. And as Leo said at the beginning, we are all very passionate about adequate funding for parks so we can keep doing these amazing things. There is a Play Fair rally on March 23rd at 10:30 a.m. Maura, thank you. Put it in the chat for everyone. So if you can go, please do. We need to support our Parks Department and make sure it is funded so we can take care of these trees. So thank you so much, everyone, especially Leslie and Leo, and we hope to see you next week. Thank you so much.